on stuff. And,
Yep.
so it's all good. I want to take it one step further and just see if I could drink it past.
Kind of drink through it.
Wicked bad, worst idea. No, you have no buzz in your head. But your motor skills are gone,
Right.
just like you drank a 12 pack.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's on it who thinks that because they're on it, it's a drink for it.
Yeah. So if that,
Not so good. Not so good.
I thought I texted him, why don't because I've never been an addict and alcohol.
Yeah. Like drug of choice,
I
yeah.
actually feel like I'm really upset because my brother's getting married and now I'm going to drink.
All right, here we go. There he is, the man, the myth,
My
the
people. All right, everybody. I'm Sean here, doing a presentation on, there's a title page here, Missing Piece to the Treatment Puzzle. Now, I've been in and out of treatment from detoxes, rehabs, residential therapeutic communities, sober houses, halfway houses, any kind of house you can imagine I've been in, including House of Corrections, which was the best one out of all of them, because you get all these lovely people together and they just, we have so much fun.
We have fun.
Not. Okay, so this is positive psychology. So it's basically introducing positive psychology to the regular, the regular form of treatment of substance abuse treatment. So I'll start off with just saying about the initial intake, the process, like, you get into someone coming in for detox from alcohol, especially in benzos, they can die from that. So, you need detoxification. Then you have the heroin addicts and the cokeheads and, meth users, all coming into, this intake office to get into a facility that will give you medication. So you get in there and, the person, you picture the person, they're very beat down, they're very downtrodden, just completely, they're very negative, So someone coming in there, they go over their, it's called a psych social, and basically it's the standard classification of, you. They'll basically go through when did you start using, what age, all the different types of drugs, on and on, so on and so forth. And they ask you questions of your past. There's no positive reinforcement, and it's sort of like a pessimistic outlook for the future, because when you go through your past with someone, especially if you don't know this person, it can be a very traumatic thing, especially even just drug use and things that have happened. Like some of the questions, might ask you, might just bring up those things. And I know it, and recently it's happened to me where it's almost like someone with PTSD, if anyone knows anybody with that. Like it brings up a lot of that stuff when you talk about it, So I was in a situation like that where I was just basically going over my history, and it was bringing up a lot of emotions. And the counselor, didn't really care. I told him, like, listen, this is really uncomfortable, and it just was, it basically, it's not a very good, I think, intake operation. It could be improved. So positive psychology would be, basically, it's not like putting a happy face on something that's like, or a Band-Aid. It's more of focusing on their assets rather than defects, like focusing on the individual rather than just a blanket sort of policy of like, putting them in AA or NA or groups, where they're all together. So, and especially since substance abuse itself involves many negative effects, that can, leave you with like depression, PTSD, anger, fear, resentment, and you're full of pain. The traditional approaches, I think, happiness, laughter, positive support, which, all relate to healthy recovery. So, the positive psychology, and this is kind of like a Venn diagram, but instead of the circle, I made a little hexagon now, so you guys get that. But, psychologists, Freud, Jung, Rogers, Adler, all basically discussed in their philosophies the benefits of positive psychology on the cognitive thinking, the behavior, your actions, as well as your biological, which, would be just your body, like, your heart, your central nervous system, the effects on that. And it evolved from humanistic psychology, which emphasized, positive rather than pessimistic theories of psychoanalysis, so analyzing the mind, which is what, like the psychosocial would do, as well as behaviorism, like thoughts leading to actions and things like that. And it talked about this study. I thought it was interesting. It was 5-HTT-LPR. Are you familiar with that? Yeah, I looked it up, and it was it's the partnered with another one is the gene responsible for serotonin transport. It's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal glands.
Right.
So, you know, these studies on the genetics basically have linked optimism to the oxytocin receptor gene, which is the love chemical, natural love chemical. So, linking this to someone who basically is using drugs for that purpose, for that chemical, like a lack of it, because I know in my case, I use drugs and alcohol just for the simple fact that I never felt love, I didn't know what love was, and I wanted it, but, you know, I found it, and especially with heroin and opiates, that was like end all, like that was just like a big warm hug of love. So that, and then once it, you know, the inevitable, like, you know, sucks out your soul, you know, you end up needing detox, you've stolen, lied, cheated in your family, everything. You get it, especially for me. One thing I noticed throughout the whole treatment process, you go in, you get basically grouped with the general population of various sort of characters, and it's mostly negative. The talk you get is negative. The feeling is negative. It's so negative, and like, you know, they talk about it when they're in there, but it's really you know, like, I think it's up to the treatment providers to really, I think, focus on this rather than the old model, especially since, you know, treatment being, you're trying to treat a progressive illness. I believe treatment needs to be progressive as well. So finding alternative forms, and especially giving someone more hope, more positivity, more maybe focus on their strengths and see what they can do in their recovery, rather than just saying, okay, here, go to a group, watch this video on, like, you know, some video you've seen like 1,000 times. You know, so I think there needs to be some improvements basically on the treatment. So, and I also have, real quick, another little thing I wrote up here. So in the big book of, well, it's kind of like, think of this as like one big, couldn't fit it on this. You know, it talks about, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, states that in order for recovery to take place, there must be a radical change in the addict's thinking, feeling, and acting. So it's got to be some sort of change. Some call it a spiritual experience, some call it just, you know, they can't explain it, but it's a change in your thinking from negative to positive. Your feeling, you know, they'll change your feeling from feeling like no energy, depressed. They can help with depression, all different things. And actions, you know, like, you know, finding someone's strengths, finding something they're good at. Like, say, for instance, down here is my website, actually, and it's more of it sort of has a radio, a magazine component, but it's an organization based on helping others, but it uses, you know, the big book of the foundation of the treatment model. But like, for instance, for example, I had a kid out of jail that I was in jail with, and I was actually sponsoring while I was in jail, because at the time I was, you know, working this 12 steps of AA. He got out, and I put him to work doing this, which is basically writing stories. You write stuff about your life in a way, and with a message to help others. He has not gone back to jail, he has not relapsed, and he's finally, you know, seeing life from a different perspective. So I think that's just sort of a testament to, you know, the new concept, new ideas, new actions on a very, very old problem. So with that, thank you.
And we'll talk about that stuff, you know, when we get into treatment, how to treat this, and, you know, Sean presents this as a